Driving can be great fun, but it also has its own responsibilities. Care not only for your own well-being, but also for the safety of your passengers and other road users. Concern for the general public, the safeguarding of property and protection of the environment. And of course for the vehicle itself. It costs a lot of money. Driving can be a challenge too. If you're on road, it's getting from A to B quickly, safely and economically. And if you're off-road, it's getting your vehicle from A to B at all. And that's what this training video is all about, to show you some of the driving techniques that will get the best out of the new Land Rovers. If you're driving on road, defensive driving is the watchword. By driving that way, you'll probably arrive at your destination quicker, but without the stress, squealing tires and wasted fuel. To do this, you must learn the capabilities of this Land Rover and drive to its characteristics. It's heavy, it has a high command position, and it's powerful. So you need to find out how it behaves, how it steers, corners and brakes, and how to use the gearbox. It has a strong diesel engine, which gives lively performance and excellent pulling power. So there's no need to be stirring the gear lever all the time. But having said that, you should still be in the right gear to anticipate situations. For example, if you're driving through a busy town, you shouldn't be chugging along in fifth gear. You ought to be in a lower gear, depending on your speed at the time, ready to anticipate changing traffic conditions. But whatever gear you're in, the gear lever isn't for resting your left hand on. Driving one-handed reduces your chances of successfully taking evasive action if you have to change course suddenly. So, always hold the wheel with both hands at the 10-to-2 position. When you turn a corner, pull it with the appropriate hand in the direction you want to turn. For example, at this right-hand turn, pull it with the right hand and allow it to slide through the left hand. Your Land Rover now has power steering, which means that less effort's needed to turn the wheel. But don't be lulled into a false sense of security and think that you only need to hold the wheel with one hand. As we said just now, you need both hands on the wheel at 10-to-2 for maximum control and for ease of movement if you have to change direction suddenly. Here are some tips when you're driving round bends on the open road. For a left-hand turn, if there's nothing coming the other way, keep towards the centre line on the approach. It gives you better visibility round a bend. Then drive towards the curb as the bend starts to straighten and outwards again at the end of the bend. On a right-hand turn, start near the curb for maximum angle of visibility, but the same principle applies. Done that way, it doesn't mean you should go around the bend faster, but it does reduce the forces acting on the vehicle. That gives you greater safety because you can see further ahead. And secondly, by increasing the radius of your line round the bend like that, you lessen the braking and acceleration needed because you can maintain a steady speed with reduced tyre wear and better environmental protection. While we're on the subject of driving round sharp bends, use your powers of observation to judge its severity. In urban areas, the position of lampposts ahead will give you a clue. And on the open road, telegraph poles may help. But take care, because sometimes telegraph poles may suddenly leave the roadside. A good clue is to watch the height of the road edge at the furthest point that you can see. If it moves down relative to your line of vision, it means the bend is tightening up. And when it moves up, the bend is straightening out. So you can vary your road position and speed accordingly. We mentioned just now the powerful engine fitted to your Land Rover. It's a diesel, and that should tell you that to drive it for best performance doesn't mean peak revs through the gears. A diesel engine starts to run out of steam well below its maximum speed, so you're much better off changing up at least 500 RPM before you get there. Driven that way, the vehicle will perform better, last longer, and use less fuel, with the added benefit of protecting the environment. And don't forget, the engine's maximum speed is governed, so it's best to anticipate the road and use the engine's torque rather than revs to accommodate swift, smooth overtaking. Don't drive too close to the vehicle in front. If you're waiting to overtake, you'll have a better view of what's ahead if you drop back a few yards. And you've a better chance of taking smooth, evasive action if he does something unexpected. We haven't talked about brakes yet, a vital part of the vehicle's equipment, but they get taken for granted, and too often absolute reliance is put on them if you get into trouble. But that may be a mistake. A greasy road or a sharp corner being taken too fast and the brakes can't do their job. The result? An accident. Or a tragedy. The vehicle has powerful brakes ready to stop you in an emergency. But the point is, why did the emergency arise? Was it because you were driving too fast, not concentrating, or what? It's all too easy to blame others, but the fact remains, if you weren't there, it wouldn't have happened. Remember, if you have to brake hard, it's usually because you haven't anticipated events. You must think ahead, slow down early, and drive at a speed appropriate to the conditions. You'll have a much better chance of keeping control of the vehicle, and the environment will be happier too. Don't forget that Land Rover vehicles are dual purpose, and they're heavier than a normal car, particularly when laden or towing. So, weight transfer and vehicle positioning will influence braking performance. Oh, and by the way, when you brake from higher speeds, a minimal correction at the steering wheel to keep the vehicle in a straight line may be necessary and is normal. One area of driving skills that doesn't get talked about too much is reversing. But in fact, according to MOD statistics, it's one of the highest causes of accidents. So here are a few tips. Reversing can be awkward, particularly in a confined area. So make sure the area's clear of obstructions. And remember, there will be a blind area immediately behind the vehicle. Standing orders require that you're always guided as you reverse. Now, there are many hazards when reversing, so move slowly and pay strict attention to your guide. As you steer, the front of the vehicle comes round in an arc and could hit obstructions. The faster you maneuver, the more quickly the front moves. If in doubt, engage low ratio for better control. Extra care is required when reversing a trailer. Before we finish this part of the programme about on-road driving, let's have a few words about towing a trailer. Now, you've probably seen accidents involving trailers, but why do they happen? Sometimes the cause is a sudden gust of high wind. But what other contributory factors are there? How about tyre pressures, for example, on the trailer? Has anybody checked them recently? If they're low or uneven, the behaviour of the trailer will be affected. But probably the biggest single factor affecting trailer stability is the way it's loaded, particularly on two-wheel trailers. If a heavy load is being carried, and it's all at the back, the rear of the towing vehicle will be lifted up. If it's all at the front, the rear of the vehicle will be pushed down. Well, either way, stability will be badly affected. The vehicle becomes difficult to drive, and control can be easily lost. In fact, your vehicle handbook specifies the maximum load which should be put on the tow bar. It's only 75 kilograms. So always make sure that any load you put into a trailer is evenly spread fore and aft of the axle. When the trailer's loaded, if you can't lift the drawbar, it's too heavy at the front. And if it tries to fly up and hit you in the teeth, well, it's too heavy at the back. A badly loaded or overloaded trailer will try to steer the vehicle, the tail wagging the dog if you like. At higher speeds, the combination will start to snake, and you, the driver, will then find yourself having to take corrective action on the steering wheel. If you overcorrect, the situation will get worse, and you can totally lose it. So if you start to snake, slow down until you regain control. And by the way, don't forget that another easy way of losing control is to tow a heavily laden trailer with an empty vehicle. Now, this also causes a potentially dangerous imbalance situation. Let's look at what we've said about on-road driving. The word scud sums up good driving. It's a proven fact that speed is the greatest cause of accidents. So, keep your speed down unless it's totally safe to go faster. And that's not very often. Conditions. Only drive in the way that prevailing conditions allow. Unexpected. Always remember that conditions may change unexpectedly. Driving defensively. We mentioned it earlier. It means remembering your responsibilities to your passengers, other road users, the general public, property, and the environment. To do this, you have to concentrate on your driving. All the time, give consideration to other road users. Treat them as you would like to be treated. And always allow for other people's inadequacies. Always try to anticipate events. Don't just be looking at the back bumper of the vehicle ahead of you or the road immediately in front of you. Think ahead and look ahead. You're in the fortunate position that your high seating position gives you a better view than the cars around you. So you should look for potential situations developing in front, anticipate events, and plan accordingly. Be aware that the unexpected may happen at any time. A slow-moving farm vehicle appearing from a hidden gate, or a child suddenly coming out from behind a parked car. So, always drive within the capabilities of the vehicle and at a speed and in a manner to suit prevailing road conditions. Remember, you may think you're the man when it comes to driving, but your passengers may not. Think ahead and drive smoothly for less wear and tear on the vehicle. In the second half of this program, we're going off-road. But remember, the basic driving techniques we're going to show you are only an introduction to the art of off-road driving. And it is an art, which you can only gain with practice and experience. Before we go off-road, let's remind you of the controls, and in particular gear changing on your Land Rover. Correct gear selection is possibly the most important factor for safe and successful driving off-road. You've got two levers. This conventional gear change lever, operating a 5-speed gearbox, and this shorter lever, which is a combined transfer gear and differential lock lever. It has two functions. One is to provide high and low ranges for the gearbox. Move it back to high range for normal on-road use and forward to engage low range so you can drive slowly over difficult terrain with sufficient engine revs. But don't forget, you must stop before attempting to change range. The other use of the lever is to engage the differential lock, or the diff lock as we call it. Just move it to the left in either high or low range to select diff lock. Use it in slippery conditions such as mud, snow, ice or sand, but never use it on good road surfaces such as tarmac. Always make sure you deselect the diff lock when you move back onto tarmac. This symbol on the instrument panel will illuminate when the diff lock is engaged, and it'll only go out when it disengages. If the light doesn't go out, stop the vehicle and drive it in reverse for a few meters to unwind the transmission. As soon as the light goes out, you'll know it's okay to move off. Never drive the vehicle with the diff lock engaged unless it's essential. The steering will be harder, tyre wear more severe, and it'll put more load on the engine, so fuel consumption will suffer. To help you keep out of trouble, it's important that you have an understanding as to what four-wheel drive is, and in particular, what the diff lock does. Have a look at this. In a conventional 4x2 vehicle, drive from the gearbox is via a prop shaft to a differential, and to two wheels only. If one of those two driving wheels starts to spin, the differential action will mean that the vehicle will stop. In a 4x4, there's also a prop shaft from the gearbox to a front axle differential to drive the front wheels too, which greatly improves the available traction in slippery conditions. In the Land Rover 4x4, a third differential is fitted between the two prop shafts. Without the means to lock this differential, it would still be possible to lose drive in slippery conditions. So, that's why the diff lock is fitted. When it's engaged, the differential is locked, so there'll always be a drive through both prop shafts. Now that you have a better understanding of the gearbox and the diff lock, we'll go off-road and see how to use them properly. Don't take the Land Rover's off-road capabilities for granted. There are few situations that it can't handle, but this depends on the driver's skill and experience to get it through, and that's where you come in. The first point to make is that you have to make sure you're not going to drive into a situation that you can't